I decided to start checking out some Legend of Zelda game rankings, and I noticed a pattern in that there were a lot of games that were all at the top of the scale. I'd say pretty much everybody I read really enjoyed and placed highly Breath of the Wild, which, let's be honest, is an incredibly good game, also the best-selling Zelda game ever, and might be the best Zelda game ever, which is crazy that they would manage to pull that off this far into the series lifespan. People also ranked Ocarina of Time very highly. For a lot of people around my age, I was 12, I think, when Ocarina of Time came out. That is a very important nostalgic game for them. It definitely broke a lot of ground, so it was innovative in a lot of ways, and along with Mario 64, kind of set an example of what we wanted 3D gaming to be. It also has aged as well as people would think, but people kind of forgive it for that. And then Link to the Past was very highly rated. Link to the Past pretty much set the standard for Zelda when it came to what a Zelda game was, and it's very fun and holds up very well. I also noticed the pattern of people ranking Wind Waker above Twilight Princess, and I'm here to tell you that that bugs me. I think it kind of forgets what the situation was like at the time of both games' release. I think it forgets the reaction to both of those games, and I think it even forgets some of the truth and actual gameplay of those games. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Wind Waker is the one that's more fondly remembered now because it was innovative. That's pretty much it. People give it bonus points for being innovative, and it certainly was. It tried to make a big, fun world to explore and kind of didn't pull it off. There's also a couple things about the game that are pretty game breaking, in my opinion. Obviously, the art style is great. It was pretty controversial at the time, but I didn't have a problem with it. I think I have more of a problem with some of the sailing aspects and that they couldn't quite fill the game, especially now compared to Breath of the Wild. They couldn't quite fill that ocean with enough stuff to do or explore or whatever. I mean, there was a lot to explore. It just wasn't always the most interesting thing in the world. Near the end of the game, there was also a big old giant fetch quest where you had to find a whole bunch of maps and a whole bunch of treasure chests. And it was long and it was annoying. And I think every person I know that played the game around the time of its release, so anywhere between 2002 and like 2006, I'll say, I think 2002 is when it came out. Don't quote me on that. Um, they got to the fetch quest, they got sick of the fetch quest, they stopped playing the game, and kind of had to convince themselves to come back and finish it. I know that's definitely my story, and I was glad I finished it because it gets back to being fun. But man, that fetch quest was terrible, and I know it was terrible because when they did the HD remake of Zelda, they definitely, or Wind Waker, they definitely addressed some of those issues. I think they made the fetch quest not quite as extensive. Hello, cat. I think they made it a little bit easier to go across the map quickly and not have to actually sail back and forth all the freaking time. Haven't played the remake, but that's just what I hear. Now, at the time, people weren't super thrilled with Wind Waker, and they wanted a return to a more mature Zelda. And that's what they got. Wind Waker was definitely at least more mature in art style and tone, and was more of a traditional Zelda game. In a lot of ways, it ran down the same path that Ocarina of Time cleared. I think it's a better realized world, certainly with the technology difference. It's definitely a much grander world, and they could do some pretty crazy things. People downplay Twilight Princess and how good it was because it wasn't innovative. But there still were some things that were kind of cool. Yeah, the other world mechanic of this game with the wolf stuff, it got a little old. It wasn't quite as interesting as like a Dark World or jumping into the future or past, like in Ocarina of Time. but it was still definitely interesting. Now, I think people forget that Twilight Princess is actually the second best-selling Zelda game behind Breath of the Wild, which has sold so much more than every other Zelda game. Now, this is the combined totals between the GameCube and the Wii version because they released at the same time. I'm combining them in the same number. If you don't combine them, I think it's third behind Ocarina of Time if you're counting the Wii numbers. Wind Waker was eighth, if that shows you anything of its popularity. Now, Twilight Princess, I think, should also be celebrated for its gorgeous yet strange art style, for the horseback combat, for creating a much more realized giant world, for some crazy ass characters and bosses. Like I really enjoyed those. I think it has the best companion character ever in a Zelda game. Midna was great and sarcastic and mean and had a story behind her, and Midna was amazing. I think anyone that's played Twilight Princess will say that Midna was a great character. So I'm just saying, if you when you're ranking all these Zelda games, don't forget how good Twilight Princess was. That's all I ask.